Okay, welcome, Charmaine. Welcome to Hayes FM.
Hello, thank
Yeah,
you for having me.
it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for taking some time out. Let's be real. It's Friday evening. There are other things we could be doing,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
we're here having a chat. So it's lovely to see you. Lovely to have you here.
Thank
Um,
you.
and Charmaine, essentially, the reason I've kind of invited you was to really tell us a little bit about your company.
Sure.
Tell us about why you set it up, how you set it up, how long you've been in operations. Because
Yes,
I
yes.
think in terms of what you're doing, it's pretty well. I won't say unique, but it is in a kind of a way. So
Yes, yes,
it's all over to you. Firstly, tell us what you're called.
yes. I'm Charmaine White, and I am an interior designer. My business is called the White House Interiors.
I love
Um,
that.
well, thank you. It's funny because before I sort of even started designing, I always knew what my business was going to be called.
Really.
So actually, one of the first things that I did when I started my business was to register the name, the White House
Yes.
Interiors. So that
Yes.
was one of
Yes.
the
Yes.
first things I did. I've been in the design industry for nearly 10 years now, and I've had my own business. Well, the business obviously incorporated for nearly
Hmm.
10 years. However, before sort of going it alone, I did work for some other design studios in London to get some experience.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people don't really, as you kind of said, it's unique. It's not. I think there is, a lot of people don't really understand what interior designers do.
Hmm.
So a lot of what I do when I'm sort of working with people is educating them how interior designers can help, and especially in times like now when we are in our homes and
Yes.
spending rather a lot of time in our homes, and some people are either enjoying it or not enjoying it, and our interiors, our surroundings have a lot to do with that. So
Tell me,
as an interior
tell me
designer,
about, tell me about it. I'm sick to death of
exactly.
seeing what I'm seeing. But anyway, go on.
Right. And the thing is, and this is the thing, I think whereas before we were all so busy and weren't really
Yes,
at home, and do you know what I mean? It's
yes.
only now we're at home, we're sort of realizing actually that could be changed, or maybe I need new curtains and all of these sorts of things, all of the things that as interior designers we can help with. So as I said,
Okay.
I work with homeowners on creating spaces that are, I say suitable, but
Hmm.
it bring them joy. It's like when you
Sure.
buy a new pair of shoes,
Hmm.
or a top or a blazer in your favorite color. You just get that little bit of a boost. And our homes, I believe, should be doing the same thing.
Okay.
Especially if you've had a long day at work, you want to come home and you want to feel a sense of calm or joy or whatever that feeling is that you want to feel
Hmm.
when you
Hmm.
are at home. As an interior designer, I can help extract that from you in ways that you may or may not have thought about. And it's, all to do with things such as not just like paint colors, but things like texture. So texture can be brought in terms of carpets or
Hmm.
rugs or curtains, cushions, wallpaper, all sorts of things. So, as a designer, I sort of take people down different avenues of how they can express themselves, or, create an environment within their home that is going to make them feel good about being at home.
Well,
Because,
all right. Look, can I just pause you for a minute there? Because
yes,
I mean,
yes,
I think um, perhaps sometimes people get a little confused as to what an interior designer does.
yes.
And I mean, you've explained some of it really well there. And the other point that I think we need to sort of also harp on about is the fact that we are at this current time spending more time in our home.
Yeah.
Um, so in a sense, what sort of feedback have you been getting from people about their experience of spending more time in their home, what they're looking at on a day-to-day basis in terms of their surroundings? I mean, what sorts of things have you been told about how people are feeling?
Sure. So, I mean, I think I've been having lots of virtual conversations,
Yeah,
if you would,
yeah.
and sort of seeing lots of things on social media and stuff. And I've kind of adapted the way I talk to my fans, followers, or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
by giving them, some hints, little nuggets of things that they can do, just small things,
Sure.
that they can do within their home to help that. There hasn't been much feedback in the way that, people have sort of said, oh, well, I'm unhappy with this or anything like that,
Yeah.
because I think, we're sort of, as well as getting used to what's going on, we're all having to juggle other things, whether it be work, children, and all of that sort of stuff. But I think at the end of this, there may be some conversations in terms of somebody who's been at home for however long we're in this lockdown for, and they'll say, do you know what, I've been at home for 3 months, whatever it might be, and I have thought that actually I need a living room refresh.
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
that's when the conversations will happen. I think at the moment we're still sort of digesting, but I think conversations will happen at that point. But so the things that I've kind of been putting on my social media are things like little tips on how to arrange, your coffee table, for example.
Right.
Not just sort of using it as a dumping ground for remotes or whatever it might be, but maybe just styling it up a little bit, putting a fresh, vase of flowers or a couple of coffee table type books, just little things like that, that when you walk into a room, they just make all the difference. Things to do with like shelves and how you might accessorize your shelves. I think a lot of the time we just kind of shove books on the shelf and they get all dusty.
I won't even show you mine. Yeah.
So just little things like that, decluttering, just rearranging a few things, putting up a few mementos, pictures, that kind of thing. Just those little sort of, I call them vignettes because they're sort of little areas that you can just make small tweaks and adjustments to, that are going to make all the difference when you walk into a room, or or that kind of thing. So those are the kind of conversations and things that I've been putting out there to sort of help people in this time, really.
Okay. I mean, the other thing that struck me as you were speaking was, are there differences in terms of how much space people have? And, sometimes people complain about having too small a space, they can't do anything in it. What would be your response to that kind of complaint about their surroundings?
Good question. And obviously we all sort of, obviously in Britain, we have homes of different shapes, sizes, and all of stuff. So this is where interiors really comes into itself, because things like color, for example, are really important. There's this whole other world, and I'm sort of learning about it as I kind of move through this industry as well. It's like color psychology. Certain colors will make you feel happy or sad, and you might suggest to somebody, well, yellow is a very bright, it kind of makes you feel quite happy when you sort of see it in terms of flowers and that kind of thing. Why wouldn't you paint your room yellow? People paint my room yellow, really? But actually it might make the difference. You never know. So just things like that. This is where, as I said, interiors are sort of really coming into its own, and people are actually starting to think more about their surroundings than they maybe necessarily did before. It's like when you go to your favorite restaurant or hotel, why is it you feel so different there? You go to a hotel and you feel, oh wow, this is the best place I've ever stayed in, or whatever it might be. That's the kind of thing that people are now wanting to bring back into their
homes.
So it's a growing industry. Well, I mean, it's huge anyway, but that kind of thing is really starting to play on people's minds more than it did before.
I mean, that's such an interesting point, because as we started by saying, people are a lot more conscious of what they're surrounded by, and it may well be that for some time people won't necessarily be spending time in hotels or whatever, but they do want their immediate surroundings to look a lot better for them than they do at the moment. So that I can see is definitely a potential direction. What about then some of the projects that you've taken on in the past? Because I should imagine they vary in terms of size and so on. And I know that in the past you've done a little bit of TV consulting. So tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So as you quite rightly said, a lot of my projects vary in size. So I've done single rooms, I've done whole homes, but I sort of say that the process doesn't change. The property and the person will be different, and the project and the brief will be different, but the process doesn't change. Right. So I will always work with clients. I mean, I'm not the kind of designer to impose any kind of aesthetic onto a client. There is sort of one common thread throughout all of my projects, is that I don't like to compromise on quality. Sure. So that's sort of common thread, really. But in terms of the aesthetic, I work with my clients very closely from the very beginning to draw out of them what it is that they want from their space. So whether that be the room, the whole house, bathroom, kitchen, whatever it might be, I will get to know them quite intricately, as I said, to sort of really pull out from them, because it could be things that they want or desire that they haven't necessarily thought about. So, how do you want to feel in the space is one of the things that we're talking about, and how do you want it to look? How does it need to function? That's also very important, especially when we're talking about bathrooms and kitchens. If you've got two people who live in a property and
Right.
you know, one of them gets up at 6 a.m. and the other one doesn't, you know, how are we going to make it so that you're not disturbing the other person? So there's all these sort of little details that you might not necessarily think about. So I'd sort of pull all of that out of them from the beginning, and from there, that's where we create the sort of brief, if you will, for the project, you know, and how in depth we're going to go in terms of the refurbishment or the renovation, if we're ripping stuff out, repurposing things, all of that sort of stuff. It's quite a detailed process. So as I said, I sort of, when I'm working with people, educate them on the process and sort of take them through it, handhold really through it, how, you know, we're going to get the most successful and the happiest result for them, really.
Okay.
Yeah, so
all right. No, that sounds pretty intense. Well, and probably necessarily so, because people need to enjoy their space.
Absolutely. It's a lot of money that they're going to be spending, so I want them to be able to invest, you know, and be happy about the investment that they're making. So absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And what about the sort of work you've done in terms of TV and so on, and you know, the awards that you've achieved and so on? Big up yourself, lady. Tell us. Come on, lady.
Back in oh God, was it 2013? I think it was. I took part in the very first series of the Great Interior Design Challenge, which is a design program on BBC Two, and it was, I've never done anything like it before in my life, and it was just the best experience, actually. It was so unlike how we design in the real world. You know, we've never had to try and renovate a room in 2 days. Right. But it was such good fun. It was such good fun. I got to meet some very nice designers who are doing really well in the industry at the moment. I had met some really, you know, experienced designers who then became mentors for me. It was just brilliant. I would love to do more of that kind of thing, actually.
Sure.
But you know, TV and real life is very, very different.
Well, yes, but you know, you never know. I suppose one just has to keep your eyes open and you know, and embrace all that. Yeah, that's,
as a platform, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it, as I said, and I would definitely do it again if given the opportunity. In terms of the awards and things that I've won, so I've been awarded by House, which is a platform for people who are looking for interiors, so they can go on there and search images and search for designers.
Right.
So for the last 3 years, I've won Best of House for design. So they've looked at my designs and all of the elements that I've produced and my imagery that I have on my page on that platform. And I've won Best of Design 3 years in a row, which has been pretty cool. Because
wow. Kudos
it's
to you.
Nice to be recognised for the things that you're passionate about. So
absolutely,
I take that. I take that, and you know, just working with people. You know, I love nothing more than when I've sort of completed a room or a space for somebody, and as much as I sort of have tried to make them see how it would look from the beginning, because part of the process is I produce visuals and plans and all of that sort of stuff.
Right.
You know, we kind of read, everybody's different. So I might be able to see the end vision, but even though I've shown them all the materials in the world, they might not still be able to see it. So when they walk in at the end of it and it's all dressed and lovely and that sort of thing, wow. And you know, that kind of feeling is
that must be such a buzz.
It is such a buzz. I absolutely love doing those types of projects. So
okay, I mean, unfortunately, we're in a situation where our listeners are going to be hearing you speak about it. Yes. And you know, those who will travel across to our YouTube channel will see you talking about it. But before you give us details of your social media and so on, where people can actually go and see exactly what you're talking about, I always like to ask this question of my interviewees: who is it, or how many people have inspired you to do this, to go down this path? Who were you inspired by?
Who was I inspired by? I would have to say, so I've always been interested in buildings, and I think that has definitely come from my grandfather.
Okay.
He was a builder.
Okay.
And growing up, I just remember being at my grandparents had this huge house in West London, and it was like a building site. You know, there
Right,
were all
right.
these things being built, made,
Renovating, yeah.
renovating, and I always found it quite fascinating. And actually, again, when we would sort of drive around areas like West London, just looking at all the different types of property, the architecture, you've got Victorian, there's Georgian, all the mixes and that sort of stuff was always interest me. And funnily enough, I found a statement that I wrote back in 1999. It was, and I
Oh,
think
wow.
I wanted to be an interior designer, and I definitely think that the influence came from, like I said, my grandfather, because he was building, and actually my dad now works in construction, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
again,
yeah.
we were growing up, he'd pick us up from school, and we'd sometimes have to go to him with projects with him, you
Yes,
know. So
yes.
I always kind of had an I think that's where the inspiration came from. I
Okay.
was moving my room around, my sisters were messy, I was tidy, I would have everything all organized, and they would, you know. So I think that's kind of where it started, if I'm honest. Definitely.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I were to ask you, what is your favorite genre in terms of interior designing, you must have a favorite. I'm not necessarily saying that you impose that on people, but what is your favorite?
You know what? I've got too many.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, I do, because one of my favorite things to do is visit like National Trust type historical homes.
Okay.
Love seeing, you know, properties that have been standing for hundreds of years and all these old tapestries and that sort of stuff.
Wow.
If I had to choose maybe two, I would say Art Deco. I love the sort of,
you know, I had a feeling you were going to say that. I don't know if it's because of what you're wearing, but I had a feeling.
earrings,
Trust me, I don't know. Let me put my hands up here. I don't know anything about this, but I just had a feeling it was that. Yeah, go on. That was one of them. Okay.
The glam of Art Deco and all the brass and
Okay.
and all of that. So that's probably my number one. And then after that, I think it would have to be Georgian, because I like the
Oh, okay.
symmetry of
Okay.
Georgian architecture, at least, especially.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I can appreciate lots of different things from lots of different
Yes.
people,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
It changes and evolves all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, as a creative, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so Charmaine, tell us, where can our listeners here at Hayes FM go and actually have a peep at some of the things you've done? You know, to give us your social, the address of your socials and so on, your website, your social media, and all the rest of
Sure.
it.
So my website is thewhitehousinteriors.com.
Right.
So on there you can, you know, read more about me, understand where I started, obviously view projects and things that I've done. I also have a journal on there where I sort of detail processes and various things to help people understand a bit more about interior design. I'm on Instagram at TWH Interiors, all one word.
Okay.
That's my Instagram handle. And the other platform that I'm quite active on is Facebook. So it's facebook.com/The White House Interiors. So I have a Facebook page where, again, I sort of share similar things, hints, tips, that kind of thing as well.
Lovely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Charmaine, for spending some time with us this afternoon. If there was anything else that you feel that we didn't touch on that you just want to sort of end with.
No, I could talk forever about design. You know, as I said, now that we're sort of spending more and more time at home, and we've got so much information out there, especially on social media, Instagram, Pinterest, all of these sorts of things, I would sort of urge people to just sort of have a think about how you want to feel in your space. And it mightn't be that, you know, you sort of look to an interior designer, but just sort of get online and have a look and see what you can do. Just because there's so many little things that you can do to just make yourself feel better about your environment. If you do want an interior designer, then hit me up. It's fine.
Well, indeed. But I mean, I mean, things are difficult at this particular juncture. But certainly, as time progresses and moves on, you know, people will perhaps pay attention to their immediate surroundings. I mean, as you say, people are so busy ordinarily, but now we are really faced with what we're living with. So I think you've made a very good point in the beginning. All right then, Charmaine, thank you so much, and we wish you all the very best with your future endeavours, and hopefully when we start to, you know, do what we're supposed to be doing in the way we're supposed to do it, but perhaps you can come and visit us at the studio, and you know, we can have a real lifetime chat.
Yes,
about your work and what you're doing.
thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.